If you're a student or beginner trying to understand IT, information systems, or programming without the confusing jargon, welcome to LD Tech Lab. Make sure to subscribe, and let's break this topic down step by step.
Have you ever been part of a project that just fell apart? Deadlines missed, budgets blown, team members confused about who's doing what, and somehow, nobody saw it coming until it was too late. Or maybe the opposite happened. You were part of a project that ran like clockwork. Clear goals, smooth handoffs, a team that actually knew what they were doing and why. And you thought, how did that happen? The difference, almost every single time, comes down to one thing: whether the project followed a structured framework, or whether it was making things up as it went along. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the project management cycle. This is the framework used by project managers across every industry, from construction to software, from community events to product launches, to take an idea from concept to successful completion. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what the 5 phases of the project management cycle are, when to use them, how to apply them in real-world situations, and what separates projects that succeed from those that crash and burn. The project management cycle is a framework that guides a project from its initial idea all the way through to final delivery. Think of it as a roadmap, and just like any good roadmap, it tells you where you're starting, where you're going, and the best route to get there. The cycle has 5 distinct phases. On the screen right now you can see them laid out. Phase 1 is initiation, where the project idea is born and validated. Phase 2 is planning, where you build the detailed roadmap before any real work starts. Phase 3 is execution, where your team rolls up their sleeves and actually does the work. Phase 4 is monitoring and control, where you make sure everything stays on track. And Phase 5 is closure, where you wrap everything up properly and capture what you've learned. Now, here's something important before we dive in. These 5 phases are sequential, they flow in order, but they're not rigid boxes. In real projects, you'll often loop back. Maybe during execution you discover the planning wasn't detailed enough. Maybe during monitoring you uncover a risk that wasn't in your initiation phase. That's okay, and that's actually what makes this cycle a cycle, not just a checklist. Alright, let's go phase by phase. Phase 1 is initiation, and it is, without a doubt, the most underestimated phase in all of project management. I can't tell you how many failed projects I've seen that trace every single problem back to a rushed or skipped initiation. Teams jumped straight into work without really understanding the problem they were solving, without checking whether the project was even feasible, and without securing the right approvals. So, what is initiation exactly? Initiation is where the project gets its foundation. It's where you identify the business need or the problem you're trying to solve. It's where you conduct a feasibility study to determine whether the project is actually worth doing. It's where you define the scope, in other words, what's in the project and what isn't. And it's where you secure formal approval from the stakeholders who have the authority to greenlight things. When do you use initiation? You use it every single time a new idea or opportunity surfaces. Every time. Before a single task is assigned, before a single dollar is spent, you go through initiation. It doesn't have to be a lengthy process. For a simple project, initiation might be a 1-hour meeting. For a complex enterprise project, it might take weeks. But it always happens. How do you do it? Here's your 5-step initiation process. First, identify the problem or opportunity. What pain point are you solving? What business goal does this serve? Second, conduct a feasibility study. Can you realistically do this with the resources available? Does the cost justify the benefit? Third, define scope and success criteria. What does done look like? What's included? And just as importantly, what isn't? Fourth, identify your key stakeholders. Who has a stake in this project? Who needs to be consulted? Who has decision-making authority? Fifth, create a project charter and get it approved. This is your official project authorization document. Once it's signed, you're off. Let me bring this to life. Imagine you work at a retail company. The customer service team has been flagging it for months. 60% of customer complaints are about the website. It's slow, it's confusing, and it's costing you sales. So the marketing team proposes a full website redesign. But before anyone touches a wireframe or calls a developer, the project manager kicks off initiation. They survey 200 customers to confirm the pain points are real, not just a perception issue. They analyze 3 competitor websites to understand what good looks like in the market. They put together a cost estimate, $50,000 to $80,000, a 6-month timeline. They map out the stakeholders, the CEO, marketing, and sales all have a seat at the table. And finally, they draft a project charter outlining the goals, scope, and approval criteria. That charter gets signed by the executive sponsor. And now, officially, formally, the project exists. The key deliverable coming out of this phase is the project charter, sometimes also called a business case. If you leave initiation without one, you haven't really completed initiation. Alright, your project has been approved. You're officially in business. Now comes phase 2, planning. And this is where most project managers spend the bulk of their intellectual energy, and rightfully so. Here's a quote I love from President Eisenhower: "Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." Because here's the thing, your plan will change once execution starts. That's guaranteed, but the act of planning forces you to think through every dimension of the project before the chaos begins. And that thinking, that's what saves you. Planning is where you build your detailed roadmap. You're not just saying, "We'll build a website in 6 months." You're saying, "Here are the 63 specific tasks, here's who owns each one, here's the exact sequence they need to happen in, here's what we do if we fall behind, and here's how we'll know when we've succeeded." The 6 planning elements. The slide shows you the 6 things every good project plan must address. Schedule. You break the work down into tasks with specific start and end dates. The best tool for this is a Gantt chart or a work breakdown structure, what project managers call a WBS. This gives everyone a visual timeline of what's happening when. Budget. You estimate costs for labor, tools, materials, and anything else the project requires. And critically, you build in a contingency buffer of 10 to 15%. Projects almost always cost more than you think. That buffer is your safety net. Resources. You assign team roles and define who is responsible for what. A great tool here is the RACI matrix. It maps out who is responsible, who is accountable, who needs to be consulted, and who just needs to be informed for each task. Risk plan. You identify what could go wrong, how likely it is, how bad it would be, and who owns managing it. Every significant risk gets a mitigation strategy. Because a risk you plan for is a problem you can handle. Comms plan. Who gets what information? How often? Through which channels? Nobody should ever have to wonder, what's going on with this project? A good communications plan makes sure they don't have to. Quality plan. What does good enough look like for each deliverable? You set acceptance criteria up front so that there are no arguments about quality at the end. Testing checkpoints go here too. Here's a quick scenario to make this real. You're planning a community health fair for 500 people. Your initiation phase signed off on the concept. Now in planning, you get specific. You secure a venue for 8 weeks from now. You identify that you need 20 volunteers and start recruitment. You break down the $5,000 budget line by line: venue deposit, printing, refreshments, first aid supplies. You identify the top risk: low attendance. Your mitigation: a 2-week social media push and outreach to local community centers. And you set up weekly email updates to your sponsors so they're always in the loop. That's planning done right. Your key deliverables here: the project plan, your Gantt chart, and your risk register. When those 3 documents exist and have been reviewed, you're ready to execute. Phase 3 is execution, and this is the one most people think of when they think of the project. This is where the work actually gets done. The plans get put into motion. The team starts building, creating, delivering. But here's a misconception I want to bust right now. Execution is not just everyone goes off and does their tasks. That's a recipe for chaos. Effective execution means the project manager is actively in the trenches, coordinating, unblocking, communicating, and adjusting. You're not a passive observer. You are the engine keeping everything moving. When do you use it? Execution starts the moment your plan is approved and your team is assigned. It runs until all deliverables have been produced and are ready for review. In a short project, this might be 2 weeks. In a large infrastructure project, execution could last 2 years. How do you do it? Hold daily stand-ups or weekly status meetings, short, focused, action-oriented. No 90-minute rambling sessions. Use a project management board, tools like Jira, Trello, or even a physical Kanban board work. The point is visual clarity about what's to do, in progress, and done. Track task completion against your timeline every single week. If something is slipping, you need to know on day 1, not day 20. When issues arise, and they will, escalate and resolve them fast. Delays compound. A 2-day problem ignored becomes a 2-week problem. Communicate any changes to stakeholders immediately. Nothing destroys trust faster than a stakeholder finding out about a project change from someone other than you. Document every decision and every significant change. Your future self, and your team, will thank you. Here's a scenario. A startup is building a mobile fitness app. The project is 12 weeks long, and the execution phase kicks off with 48 tasks across 4 teams. The development team is building features in 2-week sprints. The designer is producing UI mockups. The QA team is running test cases at the end of each sprint. The PM is running Monday morning stand-ups with the full team, tracking progress against the Gantt chart in real time. Then, week 7, a blocker hits. A third-party API the app depends on is delayed by the vendor. Without escalating this, it could cost 2 weeks. The PM escalates immediately to the tech lead, who identifies an alternative API. Within 48 hours, the team pivots. The delay is absorbed. By week 11, 1 week ahead of schedule, the beta version of the app is delivered. That's what good execution looks like. Not the absence of problems, but the speed and clarity with which problems are addressed. Your key deliverables, a working product or service, regular status reports, and a maintained issue log. Okay, here's an important thing to understand about Phase 4. It doesn't start after execution. It runs in parallel with execution, from day 1. Monitoring and control is the guardrail system of your project. While the team is executing, the project manager is constantly measuring. Are we on schedule? Are we within budget? Are the deliverables meeting quality standards? Are the risks we identified still being managed? And when the answer to any of those questions is no, the control part kicks in. You take corrective action. The 4 control areas. Schedule control. You compare your actual progress against what the plan said you'd achieve by now. The gold standard tool here is Earned Value Management, or EVM. It's a technique that tells you not just whether you're behind schedule, but by how much, and what it will cost you to recover. If you're not using EVM, at minimum you should be reviewing milestone completion weekly. Budget control. You track your spend against the approved budget, weekly, not monthly. A general rule of thumb: if your variance exceeds 10% in either direction, it needs to be flagged and explained. You either reallocate funds from lower priority line items, or you escalate to the project sponsor for a budget adjustment. Quality control. Every deliverable gets reviewed against the acceptance criteria you defined in planning. If it doesn't meet the standard, it goes back for rework. Quality control is not optional and not something you squeeze in at the end. It's embedded throughout execution. Risk control. Your risk register is a living document. You review it weekly. When a risk triggers, and some will, you activate your contingency plan. You also capture new risks as they emerge during execution. A risk identified at week 3 is far cheaper than a risk discovered at week 10. Here's a scenario. A financial services company is migrating its core database to a new platform. Week 4 of 12, and the PM's weekly review shows the project is 2 weeks behind schedule. Rather than panicking, the PM goes to work. She opens the Gantt chart and pinpoints exactly where the delay is: 2 database configuration tasks that got stuck waiting on a vendor response. She reassigns 2 developers from a lower priority module, a module that doesn't have dependencies on the delayed tasks. The recovery plan is documented and shared with stakeholders in the Friday status update. By week 7, the project is back on track. The delay never compounds because it was caught at week 4, not week 8. Your key deliverables, performance reports, formal change requests when scope or budget needs to shift, and your updated risk register. Phase 5 is closure, and honestly, this is the phase that most teams skip, rush, or completely neglect. And that's a shame, because closure done right is what makes your next project better than this one. Closure is not just, we finished, great, everyone go home. It's the formal, deliberate wrapping up of everything the project touched. Deliverables, contracts, documents, people, lessons. Think of it this way: execution delivers the result. Closure delivers the learning. Your closure checklist: deliver all final outputs to the client or project sponsor. Make sure they're received and acknowledged, not just sent. Obtain formal sign-off from stakeholders. This is your legal and professional protection. Get it in writing. Conduct a lessons learned session with the full team. What went well? What didn't? What would you do differently? This is not a blame session, it's a learning investment. Archive all project documents and files in an organized, accessible location. Future projects will thank you. Release team members and contracted vendors. Officially confirm the end of their involvement. Close out the budget and financial accounts associated with the project. Send a closure announcement to all stakeholders. Mark the official end. Give the team their moment of recognition. Here's a great example. A city council ran a 3-day music festival. 8,500 attendees, multiple stages, dozens of vendors, 120 volunteers. The event itself was a huge success. But the project manager knew that success in execution doesn't automatically mean the project is well closed. So in the week following the festival, vendor invoices were finalized and purchase orders were closed out. An attendee survey went out, 87% satisfaction rate. The full project team gathered for a debrief session where someone surfaced the most important lesson of the project. We should book venues 3 months earlier. We almost lost the main stage to a competing event. All volunteer schedules and contracts were archived. A final budget report was presented to the city council. The project came in 4% under budget. And the formal success report was sent to all stakeholders, closing the loop on every commitment made during initiation. That lesson, book venues earlier, was added to the organization's official playbook. The next year's festival benefited from it. That's the power of proper closure. Your key deliverables, the final project report, a lessons learned document, and formal stakeholder sign-off. Now that we've covered each phase in depth, I want to show you how the entire cycle plays out across 3 very different types of projects, side by side. On screen you can see a comparison table, a website redesign, a community event, and a product development project. Let's walk through each one. Project 1, new website. Initiation, the team analyzes a 60% bounce rate, real data that proves the problem. Goals are defined, stakeholders are assembled. Planning, wireframes are produced, a content map is created, the budget is locked at $80,000 across a 6-month timeline. Execution, pages are built, copy is written, every user flow goes through QA testing. Monitoring, web traffic is tracked from day 1, bugs are logged and assigned, scope creep is actively managed when new feature requests come in mid-project. Closure, the site goes live, a post-launch review confirms all objectives were met, a user feedback survey is deployed to track experience quality. Project 2, community event. Initiation, the community is surveyed, the audience is defined, the purpose is articulated. Planning, a venue is secured, 50 volunteers are recruited, a $10,000 budget is detailed. Execution, logistics are coordinated, social media promotion runs for 3 weeks. Monitoring, RSVPs are tracked weekly, a weather contingency plan is activated when forecasts look uncertain, the program is adjusted based on early registration data. Closure, the event runs, 94% of attendees say they're satisfied, all learnings are documented for next year. Project 3, product development. Initiation, a market gap is identified through customer interviews, the product concept is approved by leadership. Planning, technical specs are written, a prototype plan is built, a $200,000 budget is set. Execution, the first version is built, iterated 3 times based on testing feedback, packaging and the marketing kit are developed in parallel. Monitoring, development milestones are tracked, a supplier delay for one component is managed with an alternative vendor. Closure, product launches, a sales performance dashboard is set up to track real-world results, early customer feedback is collected and fed into the version 2 backlog. 3 completely different projects, same 5 phases, different activities, different scales, different teams, but the same structured framework holding it all together. Before we wrap up, I want to address something that comes up constantly. Which project management methodology should you use? The honest answer is, it depends on your project. Here's a simple framework, waterfall. Use waterfall when your requirements are fixed and fully defined before the project starts. Construction, government contracts, hardware manufacturing, these work well with waterfall because there's little room or appetite for changing requirements midstream. Agile, use Agile when requirements evolve and you need fast feedback loops. Software development, digital product design, startups, Agile's iterative sprint model lets you build, test, learn, and adjust quickly. The plan changes. That's the point. Hybrid, Use hybrid when some phases are fixed and others need flexibility. A marketing campaign with a hard launch date but evolving creative content is a classic hybrid scenario. The deadline is waterfall, the creative process is agile. 6 best practices that actually matter. I want to leave you with 6 best practices that separate great project managers from average ones. Involve stakeholders early. The number one cause of late-stage project failure is stakeholders who are surprised. Keep them in the loop from day one. Surprises sink projects. Document decisions in writing. Memory is unreliable under pressure. When a key decision is made in a meeting, it gets written down, dated, and shared. Always. Embrace change, but manage it. Requirements will change. Scope will be requested to expand. That's reality, but every change goes through a formal change request process. You never just absorb scope creep silently. Address risks proactively. A risk identified early is a manageable problem. A risk ignored is a crisis. Review your risk register weekly, not monthly. Celebrate milestones. This one is underrated. Team morale directly affects delivery quality. When your team hits a major milestone, acknowledge it. Celebrate it. These are people doing hard work. They deserve recognition. Always run a lessons learned session. Every project teaches you something. The organizations that continuously improve are the ones that capture those lessons systematically. Your next project depends on this one's learnings. Let's land the plane. The project management cycle, initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closure, is not bureaucracy. It's not a box-ticking exercise. It's a proven, battle-tested framework that gives your project its best possible chance of success. Projects fail for a lot of reasons. Unclear goals, poor planning, communication breakdowns, unmanaged risks, teams that burn out. But the flip side is also true. Projects succeed for specific, predictable reasons. And virtually every one of those reasons is addressed by applying this cycle correctly. Whether you're managing your first project or your 50th, whether you're running a small team initiative or a multi-million-dollar program, the principles are the same. Define what you're doing before you do it. Plan before you build. Monitor while you execute. Close with intention. You now have the blueprint. If this video was helpful, please give it a like. It genuinely helps this content reach other people who need it. If you want to go deeper on any of these phases, drop a comment below and let me know which one. I read every single one. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I cover project management, productivity, and leadership regularly on this channel. And I'll see you in the next one.
If this video helped you understand the topic better, please like, subscribe to LD Tech Lab, and comment below what you want to learn next. Your questions help shape future lessons.